In this video, let us see how to implement asynchronous edit handling for the OJ table element. In fact, this implementation is already available as part of the Jet cookbook, and we will be seeing it how to implement the same in Oracle VBCS application. This asynchronous implementation is possible because of a new property which is added to before row edit as well as the edit and events, which is a JS promise. We'll be concentrating more on the OJ before row edit event. So here I have a sample VBCS application which I have created with. I have not added any web apps yet, but I have a sample business objects with some dummy data for me to use in order to create an editable table first. So the steps would remain almost exactly the same as that for creating an editable table. So let's create a simple editable table first. Let's see what is the issue which will be solved with the async implementation. So let me create a web application. Let me give the name as web app. Create. The page loads up. Let me go and clear all the HTML since we just want a simple table here. Okay. Let me close this. Open the components. Search for the OJ table component which is under collections. Drop it on the canvas, and I need to add the data. So before that, since we need a variable which needs to be bound to this table, let's go ahead and create a variable. And before creating a variable, let's create a type of that variable. So let me go and create a new type from endpoint. Select the business object, select the sample data, and choose the one for get in a single record. So select this, click on next. Tell I want all the attributes except for links. So click on finish. So I have the type now. I can right click and create a variable out of this. Change this type to other data provider, and item type is the one which I created. ID is the key attribute. Now the variable is created. I also need to populate the data into this variable. So let me go ahead and create a VB enter event. VB enter, click next, create a action chain, load data, click on finish, go into the action chain, call the business object. We want to call the API which will give us all the data, and select, assign the response to the variable. This is the ADP and this is my response from the API. So I need to map the items to the data because the type is already the same. Let me make sure I reset the target to empty. One thing I wanted to mention here that whenever we assign some data and we want to reset the target to empty, make sure you do it at the data level and not at the entire ADP level. If you do reset the target at the entire ADP level, we will have issues during the fire data provider event, which will not work. Okay, this is something I've observed being faced by many. So make sure if you want to reset it at the data level. Click on save. Now we have the data stored in this variable. Go back to my page designer. Instead of quick start, let me go to data and bind this table to this particular ADP. And in the column section, let me select the first name, last name, email, for now I think we should be good. And the salary. Okay. So we have all this row selected. Now in order to make this table editable, generally the steps would be the same. So edit modes, set it as row edit, and then we have to implement two events, OJ before row edit and at the row edit end. So OJ before row edit. So before whenever the user tries to take that row into edit mode, what we have to do is store that particular row's data into an variable which will work only on that particular row. So let me assign the data to a variable which I can create. Let's say let me create a variable called as current row. Type is that type which we created. Go back to the action and the variables assign the row data to the current row. So uh, this is the first event, table before row edit chain. And next is the event where I need to define what happens when the edit end is occurring. So OJ before row edit end is where I need to fire data provider, use the fire data provider event wherein I need to update the data. So let me select the ADP and it will be a mutate operation on that, update the data, and the data would come from my row data here as part of the input to this action chain. And let's use the key. If it is an editable table, it is preferable to use the key and not the index. So row key. Okay. So this is a simple implementation. There are other things which can be done. So we can have a look at that details in the VB cookbook as well as the Jet cookbooks. But this is a simple implementation. But one thing to note is in an editable table, the row data which is being sent, instead of sending the actual table's row data, we have to send the current row which is being worked upon. So we have to clear the mapping which was there for row data and to make sure we send the current row as part of the input to the action chain. Let's make sure we send it as part of the event which is calling the action chain as an input to this action chain, because if we directly try to use this variable from within the action chain from the page level scope, we will run into issues. So this is one thing to keep a note, and this is for all the editable tables. So now that we have defined two events, I also need to define what the templates for the normal read only mode as well as the edit mode. So for the first name, let me drag into a input text. This same goes with the last name and email and salary. Let me go back to the template. Let me clear all the label hints. So I need to define a template in such a way that it specifies what should be done in case of an edit mode as well as in case of a navigation mode. So let me copy paste a sample template so that I can modify it accordingly. In case of edit mode, what should I do? And in case of a navigation mode, I can just show the current data. Okay. And in case of edit mode, I need to work on the data which is on the current row buffer. So let me just current row dot first name. Okay, so this would be our template. So same thing can be applied for last name, email, and as well as the salary. Yeah. Obviously the corresponding attributes would be changing in case of edit mode. So instead of first name, this should be the last name. Current row dot last name. This would be the email. And this would be the salary. I hope that. Okay. So now we are set. So let's see if this works. Okay. Donald JJJ amount of edit mode. Yeah, this is getting persisted in the table. Of course, the implementation of how do I save it to backend, that is a separate topic altogether. But a simple basic editable table is implemented, and the two events, if you go and see here, are OJ before row edit and OJ before row edit end. Okay. So now let us see the issue, a small issue which we observe here. Let me refresh this, which was there from long, which was a long standing pain point of an editable table. So whenever we take a row into edit mode, so the action that happen is the variable, the current row data is getting stored into the variable, page level variable called as the current row. Now when I take the second row into edit mode, there will be a small, a minute second wherein the first row's data will try to appear in the second row. So if you see, there was a small delay between when we switch between these two. There you can see the difference. So this is because there is a small moment in time wherein the current row is holding the second row's data, and when I go take this third row to edit mode, before this row's data is getting assigned to that particular current row data, the second row's data is visible. So in order to avoid this, we can use the asynchronous mechanism. So let us see what are the changes that we have to make. First things first is we have to write a simple JS so that we can utilize this. Let me just copy paste it from my notepad here. Go to JavaScript, there is a page module class, and okay, I'm creating a constructor wherein I'm initializing a event helper. This is the seeded event helper utility functions provided by VBCS, and I have defined two functions. One is the before row edit and the row edit end promise. And let us see how do we use these two things, and I'll explain also the working of this. Let me go back to the page, and on before row edit, instead of binding it to this event directly, let us call the first of those functions. So how do we do that? Let We will replace this dollar listeners.table before row edit with a JS call. So what is this doing? It is calling a function, passing in the event which is occurring as input to this function. This function is at the page level. So when I go into this JavaScript and see this function, what is it doing? It is taking the event detail, and to it is attaching a new promise which is sent attached to the accept parameter. This is the same thing which is mentioned in the document. So accept is a property of this event which can be uh, set to a promise, and until this is resolved, the row will not go into edit mode and it will show a loading icon, loading kind of animation. Okay, so this is, we are storing the resolve of this particular promise into a variable. We'll resolve it at some point in time, but then we are storing this, and after that we are firing a custom event. So with the help of this event helper which we are firing a custom event, and then calling the same event which was defined here. So if you remember, we replaced it on OJ before row edit we replaced the event. So we are now going into a JS and from that JS firing that event. Same table before row edit event and passing in the detail. You see under JSON that event will still be available. So table before row edit event is still available. It is calling this chain and it is expecting the event detail. Now, in this particular action chain, which is there for before row edit, after assigning this particular current row variable, we have to resolve the promise which was created. So for that, call the JS function and call the resolve row before edit and promise. So until and unless this function is not called, the row will not go into edit mode and the loading icon will be visible. So let us see if it is working. Let me go back to the designer live. In fact, instead of live, let me just preview this application by clicking on the preview button. Let the application load. Okay, data loaded. Now, if we see, if I take a row into edit mode instead of directly going into edit mode and then assigning all the variables, it will first assign the variable called as current row and then go into edit mode. So you see, there was a loading animation which happened before the row went into edit mode. Okay, the same kind of concept can be applied for row edit end as well. It is a similar concept is similar. Okay, I hope this solves the issues which was faced in editable table with the help of the async edit mechanisms. Thank you.